Well, it looks like we're working. Hey, welcome to the studio. This is my first attempt at doing wine and art. Welcome to the Wine and Art Studio. As you can probably hear, there's some nature sounds in the background because I'm a big nature lover, and today we're going to do a real easy two-colored nature picture. It's a black and red picture. Anybody can do it, and I'll go through with what you're going to need, and then we'll go through it step by step. And if you're as lucky as I am, we can have a little toast and a little bit of fun. So the first thing you'll notice, if I get my camera there beside me, is we got to get this camera set up properly. You see that I have a blackened out canvas, which I'm going to try to get into focus here. Not too sure how that's going to work, but anyhow, what we're going to do, this is an old painting that I had. I didn't like it too much. It was on a white canvas, so earlier today I just took a mixture of some water and some black acrylic paint, and I painted it over to get a black canvas. Now, you can buy black canvases out of your local art stores. Okay, they're black gessoed, so they're really easy to work on. You don't have to go through all this. But today we're just going to do it this way. Now, if you notice my tray up here, this is what I call a wet tray. I've got my colors here. I've got permanent rose, I got cadmium red hue, alizarin red hue, cadmium deep red hue, parchment, and regular white paint, and I got a tray of black just in case I want to moisten up the tray. The next thing you're going to need is a assortment of brushes. You can use a brush like so. I'd say that's about 4-inch flat brush. We'll just call that my little 2-inch round brush. You'll see where this comes in very handy. I have a little brush for trimming, and I have a 2-inch flat brush. Those are predominantly the brushes we're going to use, but we might get into some of these in a little bit. What I wanted to do is to keep this as easy as possible. So now, one of the biggest tricks for getting straight lines is reaching over around the back and coming up with the magical masking tape. Now, the reason I use masking tape is I'm not so great at drawing straight lines. I never have been. But if I take a strip like so, and I just go onto my board, give a little push around like so, push her down. Now, this will give me a straight line to work off. And that's not exactly straight, so I'll just raise this corner up a little bit, just like so. Turn the sound of birds up. There we go. So now we have a straight line we can work with. One of the other tricks to painting with acrylics is a little bit of a spray bottle. Now make sure it's on spray. You don't want to go too hard. This is just to moisten up the canvas where you want to paint. Acrylic paints are basically a glue-based paint. They dry quick. They dry a little bit darker than what they appear. So you have to be cognizant of what shades you're going to be using. But anyhow, let's get on with our first application. So I'll give a little bit of a spritz here. Just enough to dampen the board. I'll get rid of that water. The first thing I want to do is make sure that water's not dripping down too far. So I'll just clean it off the bottom. Take it off the tape. And now, I'm going to go into my first color, okay, with this brush here. Now what I like to do is kind of flatten it out a bit because you want a little bit of texture. And I'll go into my alizarin red hue. I'll just take a little on my brush. And what I've done here, if you look, I've taken it and I'm flattening it on the palette. That opens the brush up a little bit. Let's get a little bit more on there. And let's start. Okay, so we want to get some trees or something in here. Just hold the canvas so it doesn't collapse. I'm just going to tap my brush along here. Just like so. Take a little bit more of the dark there. I'm going to come down here and just build it up. As you can see, we're coming out with, might start to look like a treed area. Bring it up a little bit here. So now we're starting to get some foliage. Okay, I don't know if you can see that with the glare, but if I bring it up a little closer, you'll notice we're starting to come up with some foliage. Next thing we want to do is just to add a little bit of the deep red hue, the cadmium deep red. It's just a little bit of a different color. Again, I'm pounding it down on the palette. As you can see, I'm spreading it out. There we are right there. Breaking up my brush a bit because we don't want it too solid. And I'm going to come down here. Now the reason I have the tape, as you can see, is it'll give me a nice straight line afterwards. Now we'll just bring this up a little bit. Bring it up into here. Now you have to remember with nature, there is no such thing as a straight line. So don't worry about this. That line won't be so straight when we're done. Oh, hey, there I am. How you doing? Now the next important thing to do is once you have your second color down, you take a sip of wine. Just like so. Now, I don't need to clean this brush. What I'm going to do is just give a little white there. I'm going to take a little bit of white on my brush, mix it in a little bit here, and I'll come up with a lighter color. I'm going to bring that color into here, just to create a little bit of highlights if you wish. Just like so. This is an abstract painting. It's not meant to be realistic by a long shot. But there we have two lines there. Now, at this point, I'm going to take a little bit of the paint off the brush. Always good to have some paper towel. Get some of that excess water off your brush. You don't want too much of that. And we'll go into another color. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move over to cadmium red hue. Just take a little bit of that. Now I've mixed it in with that last color. And I'm just going to come up in here. And you notice I'm giving it a little bit of changing of the color. Remembering to leave some of your spots open. You don't want to totally cover the black. You don't want to totally cover all of your paint. You want it to be open. So now we're building up a little bit of color in our foliage. And we can bring that up there a little bit. I'll bring a little bit up in here, roll it around. Just like so. We want it to look like foliage. Bring it up in here. And we'll probably need a little bit over here just to keep things interesting. Okay, now we're coming up with some foliage. Now, we're only using red and black with a little bit of white. That's the main thing. With this, you're not going to need a whole lot of different colors because it's supposed to be a simplified painting. So now, again, I'm going to take my cloth, give my brush just a little bit of a, get some of that paint off there. As you can see, it's still pretty messy, but it doesn't have to be totally clean. Now what I want to do is I want to darken up the front just a little wee bit. So I'm going to take a little small brush, just take a little dab of that black, going to put that there. Going to take a little bit of this deep red, put that there, give it a bit of a mix. If you look at my palette, you can see I'm just mixing up. I want to get an interesting dark red. I would normally do that with a palette knife, but I forgot to reach over and grab my palette knives. But that should be enough paint to do what we got to do. So again, I'm going to take my brush, dip it in here, get it all covered up, and we're just going to hit the bottom. just like so. Just to bring it up a little bit. Need a little bit of water there. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to grab, I will grab a palette knife, so that's the easiest way to go. If you take a palette knife and you just start dragging your palette knife along the board, you can create the illusion of branches. Just kind of scrape it up every once in a while. Give yourself a little bit of a wipe off. And just continue to do stuff like that. Try not to be too even when you do it. You just want to build the illusion of force. You can see the lines are starting to come in. Remember, you got to do some crisscrossing up on the tops. Make branches that come out into the trees. This is all abstract right now. This is just something really easy to get you used to working with the paint. And it's helping us keep in the black and white and red theme. So as you can see here, it looks pretty messy down here. But what I'm going to do now, after I clean off the palette knife scrapings, I'll put the palette knife down here. I will just take this brush here, and I'm going to close up the bottom. I'm going to add some more black to this, a little bit of that cadmium red, the black. We got red and black more or less, and I'm just going to trim this off just like so. Maybe get a little bit of water going. There we go. Mix that up, and I just want to come across like so, keeping some of that red hue in there because we want it to look almost like a beach. So we just keep bringing it in. I'm mixing that red in with the black to give us, basically, if you look at it, we're coming up with a little bit of a beach or a shoreline, and the foliage is in the background. But it needs a little bit more red, so I'm just going to mix a little bit of the red over here and just come across like so, just to give it a little bit of a red feel. I want some of that red sand to show up. A bit more into the red. We'll just bring that across like so. And we have a nice red hue coming across on that beach, which is what we wanted. But now, I've never seen a beach with such a smooth tree line. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is put some plants up there. So I'm going to rinse this brush off, grab another towel, because I'll need this brush later on. Now this is very quick, very simple, just getting used to painting. I didn't want to go into anything too in-depth on my first video because a lot of us, this might be your first time giving it a try. You might even feel like you need another sip of wine. So, hey, let's go for it. It's supposed to be a fun evening, a little bit of wine, a little bit of music in the background, a little bit of noise, whatever you like, and just have fun. The thing about art is there's no such thing as perfection. Art is basically an illusion. You don't want a photograph. You want something that makes the mind envision. You're going to use your imagination. You're going to use your sense of sight, what you already know, and you'll be able to pull the picture out of the canvas. If it looks like a photograph, well, I'd photograph. I find this more fun and relaxing. So now we've got all these sticks and that around. What are we going to do with them? Well, let's get into a thin brush. This here is a number 6. Or is that a number 9? You know, 6s and 9s all look the same. Who cares? So I'm going to take a little bit of the parchment and I'm going to take some water. I want it very wet. When you're doing thin lines and small detail, you want to make sure you have lots of water in your paint. It just makes it flow much easier. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up and follow those little black lines a little bit. And just bring some trees in. They don't have to be perfect. And let's see, we'll put one in here. Get one up in here. Maybe one back in there, a little bit there. Get some of the lines in there, a little bit up in there. Like so. We're just going to build up our trees a bit. As you can see what I'm doing here, I'll bring it up close. We're just getting so-so. I'm just going to pause for 1 second. Well, we're back. I decided to try a little different idea. What I have here in front of you is what's called a palette knife. Now I'm going to clean it off for a second. I was working on the trees with that number 9 brush and I wasn't too happy with the outcome. So what I've done before I continue on is I took my white paint, this stuff here. I'm going to put a bit more down here. I'll show you what I did. Now, the trick for using a palette knife, okay, it's not just like so. What you want to do with a palette knife is you want to take the edge you're interested in, which I'm going to use this edge here, and you want to drag it through your paint so there's just a little bead, okay? I like to clean one side off. I have a clear side, I have a little bead sitting on there in the palette knife. Now, I'll cover this up afterwards, but if I was to take that and just draw a little bit, I'll bring it up close. So to make the trees, I'm just doing that very lightly. Now I got to take that back off, so because I don't want to use that. But this is how I'm working on those tree trunks. I did that with the palette knife because the brush didn't seem to be working to what I was enjoying. Don't worry, we'll get that all covered up later with some black paint, which I have here. But now I've got the basis for my trees and I've got the background. Very important. Always do your background and work yourself forward. So now I'm going to go back to, I think I'll just go back to using this brush here. Get another paper towel. And I'm just going to dry it off as best I can. We're back to this brush. Now, what I want to do with that brush is I want to make sure I can break it up. So I'm just going to, pardon the mess of my hands, but I need to spread the bristles out like so. Now, I'm going to move into my darker red paint again. And I'm just going to cover the brush just like so. I want it wide open. And now I can work on my treetops, which I will just do like this. Keeping lots of paint on the brush. You can have some of the trees showing through. Some of the trunks, I should say. But you want to get some foliage onto those trees. I need some more of that red. Remembering that trees are never a solid piece. Trees always have light shining through them.